In the small town of Storybrooke, drowning in the gloomy atmosphere of mountain peaks, a story is revealed that is shrouded in an ominous veil. The Johnson family, who came to this place in search of peace and an opportunity to start all over again, became a game in the hands of mysterious forces. Father Tom and Mother Allison with their children, Emma and Mike, crossed the threshold of their new home with a feeling of joy, but it quickly faded like a light in a bottomless night. The cursed house in which the Johnson family decided to find peace turned out to be a source of fear and nightmares that seemed to overflow through dimensions. The nights became hell, and the days became a painful mask, trying to hide the real face of horror. The first scream broke the silence, and it wasn't just a scream. It was something else, something sinister, like a voice from the depths of hell, penetrating into the soul of every member of the family. Emma and Mike heard him in their nightmares, and even Father Tom, skeptical, could not resist his pressure. The walls began to work their black magic. Blood oozed from the cracks, as if living flesh was trying to get out. The first traces were left by children, their trembling fingers imprinted into the damp structure of the walls, and then it infected adults as well. What started out as something subtle and almost imperceptible turned into a terrible vision. Their hands, like a curse, were always covered in blood. Every gesture, every touch, every look, everything left traces on the walls and floor, as if the house itself was trying to absorb their life force. The shadows seemed to come alive, like ancient spirits frozen in a moment of terror. They slid along the walls and floor, creating shapeless figures that terrified the whole family. The disturbing whispers became voices from the past, the moans of the dead seeking revenge. Every night was a torment, and sleeping dreams became a hell from which there is no escape. The family, immersed in an endless nightmare, tried to escape, but the walls of the house seemed impenetrable. Danger lurked in every corner, and the doors, like the mouth of a predator, locked them in this hell. Fear and despair have become their constant companions, and the house has turned into a captivating prison from which there is no way to escape. Every moment the house became more and more persistent. The walls pressed closer, like a living being ready to devour their consciousness. They became puppets in the hands of dark forces, and every step turned into excruciating torture. They lost their sense of time. The days merged into nights, and the nights turned into endless nightmares. The blood flowed more and more. The fear became deeper and deeper, and the house enveloped them more and more tightly with its sinister embrace. Every breath was a struggle for life. Every movement was a step towards the abyss. They were forgotten in the darkness, their screams lost in an invisible whirlwind of terror. Suddenly, one of the walls of the house began to crack, as if breaking the air into two halves. A black liquid pulsing like a demon's heart burst out of the crack. Inner fears and nightmares came to life, becoming visible and alive. Winged creatures began to appear from behind the crack, writhing in an endless dance of death. Their eyes sparkled with fire, like stars reflecting the horror of the gazes of those who dared to look at them. The air began to smell of rot and decay, like the breath of darkness itself. The shadows on the walls began to take on life, their long fingers stretched out to the living, trying to grab them and drag them into the endless abyss of fear. The sounds of whispers turned into artfully constructed melodies of horror, around which the void and the abyss hovered. Those who dared to stay in this house began to see visions of their own death. Their minds became fertile ground for terrible pictures in which they became victims of their own nightmares. Reality began to dissolve into chaos and distortion, and the lines between the world of the living and the world of the dead began to blur. The house became a multifaceted puzzle, where each room hid new horrors and trials. The walls changed shape, as if trying to devour those who dared to step into their dark embrace. The corridors turned into traps from which there was no escape, and every step became a step towards some imminent death. The air became thick and ominous, as if it could be cut with a knife. Ghosts began to materialize from it, their distorted faces emitting sounds of agony and suffering. Time twisted and twisted, creating loops of nightmares from which there was no way out. Traces of blood, like a terrible trace of a curse, led to the exit of the house, But there was no criminal emitting this horror. The footprints disappeared into the air, as if the darkness itself was swallowing them up. And then, at the very moment when fear began to engulf everyone, an ominous SMS came to the phone. An unnamed number flickered on the screen, as if it had come from hell itself. The message was short, but the words struck like blades. "I'll come back for you." The silence that followed this message was so suffocating that one could feel it penetrating into every cell of the body. The shadows on the walls froze, as if holding their breath, and the air became hot and dense, like a mouthful of smoke. The sense of impending threat made everyone in the house shrink into corners, like animals before an impending hurricane. The words of the SMS echoed in everyone's minds like a curse doomed to sound forever. The voices of the creatures outside the walls grew louder. Their wings rustled in unison, as if foreshadowing the approach of a nightmare. The night became thicker, like a veil of obsession, and the shadow enveloping the house became deeper and more real. But suddenly, at the very moment when the darkness became most dense and the fear reached its limit, the phone call broke the silence. The trill of the bell tore through the ominous atmosphere, as if a blade pierced the heart of the night. Everyone in the house blinked in disbelief, as if it was a break in a nightmare. One by one they went to the phone, picked up the receiver with trembling hands. The voice on the other end of the wires was distorted and abnormally sparkled, as if it was endowed with supernatural power. He rumbled through the speaker like an echo from another world. "Did you think that he had left you? Oh, no. I am now inside you, in your every fear, in your every breath. You are my toys, puppets in this macabre performance. I will come back for you when your fear reaches its climax. Your souls are the last act in this symphony of horror." The words pierced their minds like poisonous arrows. Their hope disappeared, and the inner terror only intensified. They realized that fighting was useless, and they became part of this grim game. The night continued to reveal its horrors, like a bottomless well of nightmares, and they realized that the way to salvation was the way to the very heart of darkness. At the end of this story, when all the lines between reality and nightmares became blurred, and the Johnson family became entangled in a web of fear, as if trapped in darkness, the title flickered on the computer screen, "The Darkest Story, Plunging into the Abyss of Horror." As if encouraging further research in the world of darkness, there was a subscription button on the Mr. Scary Stories channel next to the title. A promising call was given. Subscribe to learn more about the dark and mysterious stories that are hidden in the shadows. Each click on this button seemed like a step into the unknown, into a world of secrets and nightmares that had just begun to reveal its horrors. And the Johnson family, like prisoners of darkness, despite their fears, pressed the button, and the world of Mr. Scary Stories opened its abysses of horror and mysteries to them.